you doing? Anthony Ferraro here of Crate Sci-Fi. Today we're going to make an EVA Foam blaster. I'm really liking the way that looks on camera. Now these blasters I make are quick and easy, right? This is EVA Foam, just some paint. My Dremel tool wasn't working, so I just had to use a knife. And that came out really good. And the intention of these is for film, cosplay, web series. You know, it's meant to be actor moving around. It's not something you put on your shelf. It's not a prop replica. It's just a quick, inexpensive solution. Low cost, high impact, right? And it's just fun to build. And I'm really liking the way that that looks. All right, so let's hang out. Let's make some stuff. I'm going to show you how I did this. All right, first thing I do is get out a piece of EVA foam. This is just a floor mat foam. You get this at Home Depot or Lowe's, lots of places online. Amazon even has it. I'll have some links below. And I'm just gonna make a very basic pattern for this. I find less is more with these things. So geometrically, I'm just cutting out a basic rectangle shape. I'm going to utilize the pattern on the foam. It's this diamond shape. And when I sandwich these two pieces together, it's still going to be a little flimsy. So I just take a piece of coat hanger and I just bend it basically into the shape. And I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to create a guideline for where I'm going to put my trough. So when I sandwich it together, it's flat. And I'm just taking my wood etching tool here. It's just a hot knife. And I'm just making a groove here so that the wire will sit in there. And with this build, I'm just using all super glue. So I put a liberal amount of super glue around this since this is my core piece. A little kicker so that this sits right away. And then I make my sandwich. Now the edges are off a little, so I'm just gonna clean these up. Just basically take my knife and there you go. There's the basic shape. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is make the handle hole. And what I'd like to do with these builds is just keep things simple. So I'm taking a piece of painter's tape and I'm gonna use that to create my pattern. And I'm basically just making it the width of the painter's tape. So I cut out this hole, being careful. You always wanna have a sharp knife so that you don't get ragged edges. And there's the hole. And that actually feels good in my hand. So now I'm just going to add some dimension to this piece. So I'm going to cut out this bottom piece, and what this is going to do is just going to give the gun a more interesting profile. All I'm doing is eliminating from our core piece. So now around the edges, I want to create a lip. I want to cover up that seam where we glued the two pieces together. And I'm just cutting out a 1-inch strip of 6mm foam, and I'm going to wrap that around the edges. And again, I do this a lot. The width of the foam is the width of my ruler. That just keeps things easy. You can make more exact measurements, but for me, I like to keep things moving and keep things simple. All right, again, a piece of painter's tape, and I just want to start adding some elements to this gun to give it a little more of a profile and to make it visually more interesting. So I cut out these two pieces, and I'm going to just use my, my hot knife wood burning tool again, and I'm just going to add these little ridges, you know, to make these look like individual pieces. Perhaps it's like a heat sink for the gun. Just things when the thing's moving by, it's gonna add a little more visual interest. I put a little dot here. Again, my Dremel is not working. I would have done a Dremel rivet, but those little dots, they spark the imagination. So now I'm just going to take a sanding stick and I'm going to bevel the edges. Again, I would do this usually with a Dremel, but this is a good way to show how to do it by hand. And I'm just softening the edges around the piece. So now I'm gonna go ahead and super glue down this detail on both sides. And again, this just gives the piece more visual interest. It's when you add these things subconsciously, people just are not going to think about it. They're just going to accept it as a gun or whatever you're trying to use it as. Now I have this piece of scrap foam, and I'm just going to add a few more dimensional layers to this piece. This, I'm not even sure what I'm going to do yet. I think I'm going to put it on the side. What I do is I split it in two, and I look at the piece and I realize, yeah, that'll go good there. Again, we're just going with the flow here, right? So I cut out another piece for the front. I put that on there, and then I just found this little cap to this little bottle that was literally laying on my table, and I thought, oh, that'll be a good gun nozzle. So I'm going to glue that on there. And here I'm just using the wood tool, again, broken record, but I'm just adding a straight line through this piece, and it just makes it more interesting. I use the ruler as a gauge so that it's even on both sides. And then finally I want to make like a handle grip. And again, I just take some painter's tape, rough that in there. And now I'm going to sketch this, and I'm going to make this look like a leather grip. But this, I wanted to just sort of have a look and feel of something that's meant to make your hand more comfortable. Again, no surprise. I'm just gonna super glue this on here. So far, just foam, super glue, and a hot knife. Pretty basic. And I'm really liking the profile of that. And then you see that little nozzle there, that is the, where the projectiles come out of, the lasers. So now I just went into my greebly bin where I just have little scraps of bits and bobs, and I have this hose that's actually from a snorkel. And I'm just gonna glue that on the side there. And all this stuff looks, you know, a little strange when it's raw, but once you form it all together, it starts to become one piece. Now I'm going to take my heat gun and seal up the foam, and it also gets rid of all the little fuzzies. Also, if you want it to be weathered, you can put a little more heat to give it a damaged look, and I'm going to seal the whole thing in a base coat of black Plastidip. Now for this, also, I'm going to do a base layer of chrome and a metallic blue, and I'm just going to do a light dusting with these colors. Just over the Plastidip, just a little mist of this, and a little mist of the blue, and the blue, it almost kind of gives it like an anodized look. All right, so now back in the shop, and I'm just gonna add some details. I have some brown. I wanna go for a leather look here. Usually I would use like an orange or a burnt umber, but I don't have that, so I just add a little gold to this brown, just to give it a little bit of a light reflection that makes it look like leather, right? So I put that on here, and now I'm going to take like reds and greens and blues and just do tiny little details. These are little things that the eye will subconsciously catch, and it just helps to sell the whole thing. So I have these greens, and I put a little red here, and just that little tiny bit is good. So I'm going to now just add some rub and buff, some silver rub and buff. And what this does is gives it more of a metallic look. And when you apply this by your finger, it definitely gives it a more organic look, right? It looks like this piece has been through a few battles. And I'm just gonna seal up all that goodness in some clear coat before we go to the weathering process. Now, if you follow my channel, you know what I do here. A lot of black paint and a lot of water, and we give it a black paint wash bath. I just covered a whole thing. I go to town on this. And what this does is it gives me lots of happy accidents. If I try to be specific about this, usually, I don't know, it doesn't come out as good as if, you know, this thing was just dunked in a bucket of oil and you just mop that off. And then now it looks like a real object in the world. And again, we're gonna finally seal this up with some clear coat. And here's the finished piece. Some foam, glue, and paint. I think that looks pretty good. It's always amazing to me what these look like on camera. And that's something to keep in mind. You know, when I'm making this and looking at it, I'm thinking, well, maybe I could do this a little better, or maybe I should take the time to tighten that up. But really, on camera, I'm looking at it now in the monitor, it just really looks good, right? So, only thing left to do now is to fire it up. Engaging. Not bad for a 1-hour EVA foam build. All right. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I love to read the comments. And be sure to sign up for the email newsletter. And remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.